Greetings! It's I, Countess Dracovin, Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome once more. We're diving back into the Pathfinder world of Golarion to learn all about another country, region, location. We're kind of going on our world tour of it. If you're joining me, of course, you can either be joining me live on Twitch, which hi Twitch, I hope you're enjoying your time here, or if you're joining me on YouTube a day or two after we streamed live, hey YouTube! Glad you're also enjoying this video here and this recording. I hope you learn a lot both sides and you're enjoying your time. And, maybe check out the other at some point in time. That's another thing I suggest. The usual kind of spiel of giving support. Sub on Twitch, or follow on Twitch, sub on YouTube, follow the video. And the question for both sides today is, which I honestly, Worm who's in chat here, I know your answer. Have you played in Korvosa? Certainly there's a bunch of cities related to it, especially, hey, Curse of the Crimson Throne, which I'm running in my live show of the Crimson Queen. Hint, hint, check out that show. It's Korvosa. We're talking about that today. Hint, hint. There are plenty of ways to show your support, answer the questions there. But yes, that's what we're talking about today. Korvosa, a city-state. So it is part of the Varisian region, but the Varisian region is kind of this, I talk about it in general in an older video about this kind of thing. And most of the power bases in there are a number of city-states. And Korvosa is honestly the oldest of the city-states. They are one that was settled, that a lot of violence, as we're going to talk about today, and was basically settlers from the south that were like, hey, this area that's kind of untamed, wild, not controlled by anybody, let's move in here. It is a resettling of a region from an earlier time, basically the end of the world, when, Earthfall happened. Let's talk about some books you can check out, because I always talk about it. My main sources that I start out with are usually the Pathfinder wiki, and followed up by a number of books that I will use to reference material and look up little extra details and things like that. For you out there, I can definitely suggest checking out the wiki first, or the following books that you might want to look into for some additional details. And the details of the wiki are kind of a bunch of these combined, simplified, and stuff like that, so you'll find a little bit more of these. Of course, from Pathfinder 1st Edition, the campaign settings, kind of where you kind of introduce it. Hey, Curse of the Crimson Throne, the Player's Guide, or the full book itself. Guess what? Curse of the Crimson Throne goes over Korvosa, what's there, who are there, a lot. So I definitely can check that out. From 2nd Edition, the Lost Omens World Guide does provide some information. Of course, there's the Pathfinder Chronicles, an older book, Guide to Korvosa. The Varisia Birthplace of Legends goes over some information about Korvosa, but is more about Varisia as a whole, but does kind of give you some information about the city-states. And of course, there is Korvosa there. And let's talk about it a little bit here. So, let's get started. Talking about that Korvosa. So, it is pronounced Korvosa. It is the largest city in all of the Varisian region. And it did used to be the Cheliax capital, the capital of Cheliax, Varisia. Having broken away from Cheliax, it means that they are no longer associated with them directly, but when the Cheliax controlled Varisia, this was their capital. It is the seat of one of the three main city-states that claim authority over large parts of the region. Its citizen traditions still do have very strong ties to Cheliax. Very obvious there. They are descended from the Cheliax people. And many of their ancestors are direct servants or people connected to the Chelaxian Empire. It's located on the mouth of the Gazetteer River and is a highly defensible harbor, which has contributed to the establishment of it as a major trade for hub in the entire region. A lot of cultures and people can be found within the city's walls. Goods move in and out of its various gates. Magnamar, which I talked about in a video a couple of weeks ago, is its neighbor and rival. And they disparagingly refer to Korvosa as Little Cheliax, kind of as to insult them. Its current queen, which, spoilers for Curse of the Crimson Throne, at least how it officially ended, is currently Cressida Croft, who was selected to rule by the Seneschal upon the death of the city's previous monarch, Queen Elosa Arabasta. So, yes, it's a little bit of a spoiler for the Crimson Queen. In the original storyline, how it ended up, the current queen loses her life. And, hey, the person you're working with is chosen to be the new one. But the current Crimson Queen storyline may go differently. That's how it officially ended. And remember, the official are kind of like the mid-best routes. You know, they're the mid-routes that things ended up the best, how they officially ended in Adventure Pass. So they could end up better, they could end up worse, you know. Maybe our heroes will manage to save the queen. You know? Who knows? It's just an interesting thing that this does directly relate to the Adventure Path I'm doing now. You know. So, let's talk history a little bit here. There we go. There's the Korvosa flag. So it is the oldest of the three city-states, by far. And it is an independent city-state now. That's an important thing to talk about. It still has a huge defensive position for many of the explorers and settlers that would come into the Varisian region, which does still help it grow as a cosmopolitan trade center. It was built upon the ruins of the Thessalonian city Zin Eurythenia, which was the capital of Eurythenia, ruled by Sortian, the Rune Lord of Lust. So, that's kind of where, if you know a little bit about it, the big old temple that's there in the middle of it, big old pyramid, was a Thessalonian ruin. The Shwanti people moved into that region and kind of basically looked after this ancient pyramid and the ruins that were there because they were connected to Thassalon. And, you know, the memory of the horrible things Thassalon did. So, when the Cheliax Empire arrived, this place was a sacred site to the Shwanti. They protected the location, the pyramid, the ruins. It was of importance. But in 4407, Chelish Marines under Field Marshal Dracovin Korvosa basically decided to create a defensive outpost here. Fort Korvosa was a common spot for explorers, settlers, traders coming into the region. They were the trading post and its defenses were strengthened after the Shwanti forces burned much of the location and it became known as the Great Fire. Beyond this, there began the Cousins' War in 4504, so nearly 100 years later. And this is a result of an insult directly at one of the Korvosa noble families. The conflict heralded the end of the settlement's significance as a military position, but it also resulted in the growth of its population and economic power. And it was soon as a true colony of the Empire of Cheliax after this event, the Cousins' War. Basically, it changed it from this military trading post to settlement. The next big event, of course, now there is one more thing. The village of Paizo was founded in the nearby Fenwal Mountains in 4563, and has served ever since as a source of ore for Korvosa, flowing out of the Janderhof. So that was a big thing that got settled there. I should mention that, because that's also one of the connection regions and that. We can talk about its history. But the next big thing that happened was the death of Eredin. In 4606, the deity Eredin's death resulted in a civil war in Cheliax. The colonies, including Korvosa, suffered as their connections to the homeland unexpectedly disappeared. Thousands left the city when they were dissatisfied with Cheliax's influence in Korvosa and settled in the current smaller colony of Magnamar in 4608, turning it to the larger city it is now. It changed from small settlement nearby to actual large one. since then, becoming basically forcefully became independent. That was the thing, is the death of Eridan, the Civil War, forced them to become independent. So they were forced to regain some of their prosperity during that time. But again, the population is a fraction of what you expect given its physical size. So that is the thing about Korvosa. It's a very large area, but it's actually not as heavily populated as you would think. Because again, so many people left it. There was so much conflict with the result of what happened with the death of Eridan about a little over 200 years ago. Or no, a little over 100 years ago. But now, terms politically, they're about equivalent to Magnamar. And it's far below the level of appropriate to the desiccant ruling classes there. So, now we have to kind of talk about Queen Elosa. And now I'm going to kind of say, this is for you, Worm, mostly. This is kind of spoilers for the end of Crimson Queen. We're going to do a little bit about them. So I would recommend, I'll give you a little couple of seconds here to pop off. I'll type into chat when spoilers are done. So I'll put this Crimson Queen spoiler warning. Don. A little bit about how things ended up there. Okay. So, basically, in recent history, we had the rise of Queen Elosa Arbaston. And it was around 4707 to early 4708. Basically, the story actually goes that Queen Elosa was possessed by the spirit of the dragon, Kazaron. And so an ancient dead dragon that was in the pyramid basically possessed her and resulted in the death of her husband. He was basically poisoned by red mantises, ensured that a lot of power around her were there, and basically was corrupted by it. The king died, the city fell to her power, using seduction, red mantises, murder, putting people in jail, things like that. A lot of issues that were going on. And she was really poisoned by something that was almost looked like leprosy, but it was poison. There was upheaval in the city, diseases, plague, civil war almost going, the disappearance of the Seneschal. The rioting broke down. There was a person that she took control during this time. The Sable Company Korvosa Guide tried their best to maintain order. They didn't have numbers. The Order of the Nail came in and helped gain control. And thousands perished from a disease that came in during this time period. Eventually, though, the queen was defeated, killed, and removed from her seat of power. Her guardians that she created, the Grey Maidens, have now splintered into a mercenary faction following her defeat. And, of course, she was succeeded by Cressida Croft, who had been the field marshal, led the Korvosan Guard during much of the riots. Because her, or the former king, Eridan II, did not have a biological heir, so the Seneschal chose her. Spoilers done. Alright. Spoilers done for those of you who, don't want to get spoiled for Crimson Queen. I left a little bit for that, It was a thing that was going to happen. Let's talk about Korvosa as a whole. Because, as I said, it's on the double bend of the Jageri River, just in southeastern Varisia, and empties into Conqueror's Bay. Its oldest part of the city is located on Ancient Island, which is a relatively small split of land. Majority is on the mainlands of the Narrows of St. Alka. 2 smaller neighborhoods, Thief Camp and East Shore, which I'll talk about, lie on the eastern shore of the river. It's built around 2 major hills, Garrison Hill on Android Island and Citadel Hill on the mainland. The smaller Jageri Island lies on the southern coast of the city and holds a little but Halland's lighthouse. So there are 7 official districts here. I'll talk about all of the different places. There's East Shore, the Grey, Heights, Midland, North Point, Old Korvosa, South Shore, and the technically the Shingles is part of one of the other areas. The Vaults are also a sub-area. But we can mention the Shingles and the Vaults. Let's talk about each of these in turn just a little bit. As I said, 2 of these are technically subgroups of the 7. The Undercities, the Vaults, and the Shingles are the areas of the rooftops, which they encounter. So East Shore is the city district located on the far side of Jageri River. It's connected to the rest of the city by High Bridge, and it's home to a number of the noble families with strong ties to the military. It's location of the second and inferior magical school, the Themaxis College. So there you go. That's the major place there. The Grey is the graveyard, where the dead are interred. It's only living inhabitants of the Friese of Pharasma who tend to the Grand Cathedral of Pharasma. So visit the Grey. It's a big old graveyard. The Heights sits atop Citadel Hill, and it's on the cliffs of Korvosa's western shoreline. It's home to the most powerful noble families, including the Monarch, as Castle Korvosa is located within its borders. The giant pyramid is located within its borders. The Academy, their most well-respected magical college, can also be found here. And it's the highest district of the city. The residents feel like they look down on the rest of the city, both literally and figuratively. Crest Citadel is also here, Cliffside, and of course then the University of Korvosa. You can't forget Castle Korvosa, the castle on top of a pyramid, because on top of an ancient pyramid, let's build a castle was a great idea. Not gonna lie, it really wasn't. Midland is what you speak of when most visitors think of Korvosa. It's the southeastern quadrant of the city. The vast majority of merchants, shop, financial institutions, people are here. There are criminal elements who play on the wealth here, but they're kept in check by the fact that the headquarters of the Korvosa Guard and Sable Company are located in Midland, which keeps things, peaceful, relatively said. North Point was the first part of the mainland to be settled after the city began to expand from Adrian's Item. It encompasses the northeast quadrant of the city, home to many families descended from the early settlers, in addition to much of the municipal infrastructure, including city halls, courts, and the Bank of Abadar, find themselves in North Point. Old Korvosa. It's the oldest. It's the poorest. It's the most overcrowded. It encompasses all of Endron Island and is dominated by Garrison Hill. The shantytown of Bridgefront is located on the western part of the island. It rises from the sea level and estuary mouth of Jageri River to a 200-foot high escarpment on the seaward north side. At the foot of Garrison Hill, a steep incline is called, as the steep incline is called, sits the poverty-stricken and collapsing Bridgefront. So that's where it's at. Old Dock stands a relatively flat eastern protrusion of the island. And of course, Fort Korvosa is atop Garrison Hill, which was completed in 4438. So that old fortress that was here originally is still there, technically. There's also Palace Arcona dominating it. And, a lot of this place just falls away. Old Palace Korvosa is an old mansion where the previous Arcona ruling family ruled from. There's also the old City Hall, Orsini Academy, a school for sword fighting, a military academy here for Korvosan guards and Sable Company trainees. That also would be a place to gather people from the people. A number of other areas, Eel's End from the game, if you haven't, or from our Crimson Queen, if you haven't checked that out, that exist here. The Ironworks are also here. So it's a stuffed in, it's what I'm showing here in the image is Old Korvosa. South Shore is the newest district, founded at the end of the 47th century AR. So probably like 30 years ago at this point in time. Less than that, you know. Yeah, it's fine. We got through the spoilers. I didn't want to like fully spoiler you on some of the stuff related to the history stuff there for people that wanted to kind of avoid it. Because again, Korvosan history into 2nd edition Pathfinder does include the adventure path and results of it. And there are some details that are best left to mystery for now, I think, for people. For anybody that wants to avoid those spoilers. But yeah, South Shore, newest thing there. A southern edge of mainland Korvosa next to the Grey District. It doesn't have a lot of overcrowding that plagues a lot of the other parts of the city. It's got sought-after residents of the new money elite. And it's home to the Pantheon of Many, which is the Korvosa's most innumerable cathedral. God, I cannot say that word. Which is devoted to most deities in the Inner Sea region. Except for Gorum, Lamashtu, and Rovagug. But, you know, Kalian and Desna weren't there originally either. But they got added in. Because people wanted to, like, go there also. So... I mean, like, the really bad deities aren't there. And then, of course, there's the two areas which are technically not districts of their own, but important to talk about. The Shingles and the Vaults. The Shingles is the rooftop area of more densely populated areas of Old Korvosa, Midland, and those kind of areas. They're ramshackle abodes, shops, known as the Shingles. If due to the overcrowding, poor citizens are there with quick highways that are made above the bustling streets. It's basically a skyline that exists. And it was created during the last few decades with an urban renewal project that pushed the city's poor in areas of areas like Bridgepont and Old Korvosa. And their style after similar structures in Karamaga, which, just to note, is one of the other Parisian city-states. We'll talk about them in their own video at some point in time. You know. They're built upward to the sky. The foundations of the roof of other buildings. Homes are in the Shingles are shacks, lean-tos that are propped to. Third stories of many buildings have been incorporated into this. They're kind of like weird kind of network of things, including the upper roofs and stuff built on roofs. Majority of places, the Shingles as they exist in a number of places in the city. When we were doing with it in Crimson Queen, we're dealing with a version of it in Midland, which is probably a little nicer. There are some found in, like, a version of this is found in, like, Bridgefront, in Old Korvosa. Where it is the worst, in probably things. Places like Bridgefront have imps, bloodseekers, large spiders, chokers prowling these settlements here. You know, so creatures, monsters find themselves in there, too. And of course, then there's the Vaults, which I mentioned, which runs under the mainland Korvosa, as more than just sewers. It does incorporate the ruins of two other settlements that were located there in the Vaults. So it's the underground that includes, like, old ruins beneath the streets and sewers of two settlements that were in the region. Probably, I can name the one of them. The Schwanti settlement that was here to guard the pyramid, and the Thessalonian settlement that was here from the ancient city. So there's a lot of interesting ruins under Korvosa. Yeah. Hey, there's the rooftop chase that we didn't have. So, much like Magnamar, which I talked about in a previous episode, Korvosa does have a number of holdings under their control, and basically controls a region. While they are technically a city-state now, and because they've really only been an independent city-state for, what, maybe 100 years, 120 years, they haven't had a chance to develop into an entire country. But they still have a number of regions and villages and towns that are part of their holdings, of the influence of Korvosa. And we can talk about them. The first off is, of course, Abken, which is one of the newest settlements in Varizia, founded in 4668, effectively 50 years ago. It was a commune for peace-loving lower-class Korvosans. It's on the upper banks of the Yondabarki River, before it flows into Lake Sirutha, 45 miles northeast of Melfish. It's surrounded by wooden palisade and protected by its inhabitants. So yeah. They are considered a Korvosan holding, but they're relatively independent. They do have some trouble with the Skalar Quo, Shawanti tribe, occasionally, and they are connected with Karamaga a little bit, too. So they are technically Korvosa, but kind of out there. Basilwif is the mining village that I mentioned earlier in their settlement. It's not a large place. It was chartered by Jaden Basilwif, a cartographer and surveyor from Pars, who basically, for the Korvosan government, discovered things there. The first town that was here suffered from a red dragon attack, Glaxerturus, in 4569, after it was settled in 4563. There were several rampages after that, and his most recent attack didn't attack the village, even though he rampaged for a while in 4674. But copper, iron, rare metals from the Fennel Mountains come through here and head into Korvosa. Compared to other settlements, it has a very large population of halflings. And the cloud giant Sephirin visits it every 3 years and challenges anyone to cook him the finest dish. The winner earns a jewel the size of a chicken egg. The runner-up, platinum coins. So Cloud Giant comes down to the village and is like, "Hey, it's meal cooking contest. I've got some gifts for you." I guess he really likes just trying some meals and stuff out. Biston is along the ancient cliffside, among the cliffside structures and caves on the shores of Lake Sirentula is Biston. It was founded in 4574 by Genai Biston, who cleared some tunnel structures nearby of the Zugloth inhabitants, which were rumored to eventually been like harpy tunnels and caves. Amongst Korvosan connections, the fishermen and farmers of Biston have a sense of independence. In 4658, Genai's grandson led a group of separatists as a revolt to secede the town for Korvosan control. Korvosa responded in kind. They sent half the Sable Company, an entire regiment of Korvosan guards. All the rebels were executed in Korvosa. Martial law was maintained into 4690, when it was lifted by King Eredin II. So they tried to go independent. It didn't go well. Of course, Bloodsworn Vale, not a city, but a region within the Mindspin Mountains, between Varizia and Nermis, is technically kind of seen as part of Korvosan influence. It was the site of a large battle, a months-long one in 4396 between the Chelish army of Field Marshal Korvosa and the Shawanti natives. It's one of the bloodiest battles in the region, in the Ever War that Chelish expansion was. Fields of rose mark the graves of many Shawanti and Chelaxian soldiers that died fighting this land. The Vale is a major trade route between Cheliax and the northern holdings of Varizia. During the Chelish Civil Wars, this was kind of abandoned, though, overtaken by the wilderness, and in 4707, King Arbasti of Korvosa called upon Sir Gwyneth Holgren to reclaim the Vale and reopen trade routes, resulting in the founding of Fort Thorn within the Vale to aid the efforts. So, Arbasti, before he passed away, called upon a person to, clear out the area as best he could and reopen the trade routes to the northern parts of Varese. Fire drakes are here a lot. They still haunt it, despite being wiped out when the Vale was reclaimed in 4707. They still haunt the area. Many of them fled to the Mindspan Mountains, consorting with giants and evil fae, conspiring with the people of the Vale. Hars is a town. It was settled in 4563 by Saruman Hars, so it's a very old one. As a gateway between Korvosa's inland holding and its seaward settlements. As the junction of the Salmon and Falcon rivers, its twin ferries provide the easiest means of crossing both rivers for travelers in the area. It's built on a narrow strip of land between the two rivers, and has been a ribbon crossing since the time when the Cheliax arrived. It has a few dozen buildings, including a church of Erastil, 2 grocers, 2 taverns, the Spotted Pony and Nagbag, and most of the inhabitants live in the village proper, but there are some isolated farms and ranches throughout the local countryside. It's known for its horses, and a large rodeo, with each year determined Varese's top riders and animals. So, interesting. Another holding is Palin's Cove, near the named for Karen Palin, the naval heroine in early Korvosa. It's one of the most important holdings in the city-state's realm. It was a military outpost originally, but it's been a vital role in early Chelish victories over the Schwanti. It's located approximately 80 miles northwest of Korvosa at the mouth of the Falcon River. It served as a naval garrison until 4485, and it became an official settlement and city. A number of extensive Schwanti sieges have been laid upon the town, but it's never fallen. And it was ruled by Korvosa with a strong industrial presence. In modern day, Palin's Cove is identified for miles around by thick black smoke with rises from many factories. Pollution by the industrial epicenter has called to great animosity or violence from druids, Gozarin worshippers, or even normal smiths and craftsmen pushed out of their niche by overwhelming workhouses. Catapults, ballistas, trebuchets are a major export of this town and Korvosa, and they're always ready for another attack. Remnant of its military origins. And they have also been plagued by the Red Dragon, Glarictux, who's tormented the town periodically since its first attack in 4571. That Red Dragon just shows up and it's just a dick in the region. Fuck! I just looked up Galaxarus. Sorry. I just checked on him to see if... So, yeah, they tried to negotiate with the dragon, but they failed because they recently discovered Galaxarus is deaf. So, most dragons you can negotiate with, he's kind of difficult. He can't hear anything. Maybe that's why he's so angry and just, just beats up the entire area. Korvosa, Venturlane, Palin's Cove, any of these cities. Sarathu is kind of been overlooked by the ruling city of Korvosa for a long time. It's the farthest and farthest removed of the holdings. But as of late, it's because it's a relatively late addition to Korvosa's power. It was seceded from Kaer Mog in the Treaty of Surmouth in 4663. So while the town is technically older than that, it's been under Korvosan holding / ruler 6 for only about a little bit more than 50 years. They're constantly reminded, the leaders of the town, by their disregard of the people above them, by the White Prince's Fountain, which sits in the town squares. Basically, when it was constructed, the nobles of Korvosa promised it would be enchanted to provide clean, endless water supply, so it can never depend on wells. But when, basically, the fall of the Chelaxian Empire diverted their attention, the well was never completed. In 4707, a local girl was found unconscious by the fountain, which was flowing for the first time. And since then, this young girl, blessed by Pharasma, has been a galvanizing force in the unrest of the citizens, prophesizing that changes coming in the town should break free of Korvosan control. Basically, become independent. It'll go great. It's done for so many other towns that have tried to go independent from Korvosa. Korvosa does just the fist down on them. And Velderain is a very important strategic holding for Korvosa, as the second oldest Chelaxian settlement in Varizia. It's at the mouth of Conqueror's Bay. Velderain's ships make up most of the Korvosa Navy, and its naval academy trains most of the city-state's sailors and captains. It has a great winch, which allows the military to put an immense chain taut across the entrance to the bay, keeping invading pirates or navies out of the waters, or trapped within, whichever is useful. The chain is inspected monthly by Korvosan officials, and has only been used once in 4685 to fight pirates from Riddleport. And it's very dependent on trade and support from Korvosa. And if you want to know, there is a small cult there. Of the Gossamer King, resides outside the town in the Thessalonian ruins, breeds poisonous bloodseekers, and plans to use them against those who do not follow their god. Well, that's the holdings and general region around Korvosa. I probably should have mentioned East Camp a little bit. We talked about East Shore. I did forget, I'll mention it because it is located outside the city, within the region. So it's technically outside the city. It's near East Shore. It's a small tent camp area inhabited by local Varisians and Shuanti who don't find acceptance or do not wish to be accepted with the rest of the Chelaxian majority city. On the south end of the neighborhood, south of Northbridge, has a few shops that cater to outsiders and elsewhere in the region. So that there is also a little encampment outside the city proper. Whoops. Shoot. I didn't mean to do that. Let's reopen that. And fix that. That's on me. There we go, fixed it. Woo! Let's talk about Korvosan government. Because that's a big thing to talk about. Because the government is complex, to say the least. So there is, of course, the seal of Korvosa. One of the two symbols that I'll be showing off here. So there are three branches of Korvosan government, each with its own sphere of influence. In addition, it has noble families which exert power over the affairs of government. So there is definitely a complexity to the entire government. First off is, of course, the monarchy. They were appointed following the decline of Imperial Cheliax. The monarchy has served as primary diplomats and defenders of the city-state. Its royal bloodline has served the populace from the famed Crimson Throne since it gained its unexpected independence. Its authority is always limited. Its control of the government is shared with other groups and existed prior to its inception. Originally, these came from magistrates, which were in charge of it. When it was a Chelaxian colony, the Lord Magistrates were the people in charge of it. And Aridin Abrasti I was the man who would become King Aridin Abrasti I, which was the great-great-grandfather of Aridin Abrasti II, who, is in the Crimson Queen adventure, where his death is. So, yes. And so there have been... the same kind of group of people were always kind of in charge. It just became a monarchy, eventually. The second group are the arbiters. They act as judges, hearing disputes and crimes, and determining punishments for those that deem guilty. They're responsible for legislative oversight over decisions made by the other branches of government. The most well-known senior arbiter of the city is Zenobia Zenderholm, also known as the Hanging Judge. She is justifiably fielded by the criminal class for her harsh rulings. So yeah, it does check the degrees of the monarchy. other than being judges, So most of the time they're spent trying criminal cases, civil disputes, with a legal weight that is equivalent to those of a monarch. With the severity of the crime, up to 9 arbiters might be on a single case. So the more severe the crime, the more arbiters you have. The total number is always odd, eliminating the chance for a stalemate. Some convicted and sentenced by an arbiter may appeal their sentence, but not the verdict. Few are aware of this right. And only a half dozen such appeals have been brought before arbiters every month on average. So the fact is, when you're sentenced and convicted, you cannot overturn the verdict. But perhaps, depending on your sentence, you could overturn that. It might be the difference between, 40 years in prison and 20 years in prison, or death and just prison settlements. So they do, and then the other powers, of course, examining edicts, decrees that are passed down, determine if the monarch is saying legal decrees. It's checked by 7 arbiters against the Korvosan City Charter, which is the most current version of laws the most current version of laws of the nation of Cheliax. So they use a combination of their own charter and the laws of Cheliax to kind of do those things, They basically base their law after Cheliax law. 5 of the 7 must agree that the new edict does not contradict either of these sources for it to be passed into law. And if the review rejects the edict, one of the members who voted against it must advise the monarch how to make it more acceptable. And as further check against monarchy, the consent of a single random chosen arbiter is needed, along with the unanimous vote of 5 representatives of the great houses and the Shanaval of Korvosa, in order to evict a king or queen from Castle Korvosa. This only removes them from the castle, it does not eliminate their power. And they're headquartered in Long Grace Building in North Point. That is the arbiters. Let me switch pictures here to this symbol, which is weirdly in the corner. It's another Korvosan symbol, but it's weirdly in the corner. I don't know why that shows up in the corner there. There are the magistrates. They're in charge of daily maintenance of the city. There are 23 individuals that comprise the body, are primarily concerned with the matters of bureaucracy, taxation, economic oversight, public works. Garrick Tan, the magistrate of commerce, is one of the least popular, as his duty is basically chief tax collector. Seal Gar, the magistrate of expenditures, is one of the most popular, responsible for spending taxes on the city's behalf. Mercer Kukuteni is the current magistrate of tourism, responsible for making the city seem interesting and inviting to outsiders as possible. And Lolia Penne is the magistrate of regulation. They spend most of their time searching various means for merchants and customers, searching for various means by which merchants and customers cheat each other. Basically trying to prevent that cheating. Basically, when the monarchy was created, magistrates and the bureaucracy underlings justified their existence to the first king. And that's why they became one of the 3 branches of the government. City Hall houses all 23 of the magistrates, with a staff of nearly 100. And so, yeah. That is the magistrate. Also, there are a couple other groups that we can kind of talk about. The monarchy is advised by the Peerage Review, which is a council comprised of the heads of the Korvosan's 5 great houses. The remaining 21 noble houses comprised of the dock families, each boasting control over one or more of the city's docks. Many of the nobles of Korvosa long for the culture of Cheliax and use Cheliax fashions and customs to lord over the populace, considering themselves the model of Varisian culture. So there's 5 great houses, and the Peerage Review was founded in 4611 with the cooperation of Lord Erebus to basically be the noble houses advising the monarchy. They have little effect on policy. They may just, even the 5 great houses in the Peerage Review don't really have that much power. They just basically have the ear of the monarchy and advise them and don't have a lot of conflict with them. It's basically the way that the Korvosa keeps things in check a little bit. With the monarchy controlling, not really controlling, but dealing with these 5 great noble houses and, making sure they don't get out of line. The traditional colors of Korvosa, seen in the flag of member users, are red, black, and silver. Red and black relate to the flag of Cheliax, although the Korvosa flag uses a darker crimson than its mother country. Silver is important to the as a symbol important to the city. This is the device of Korvosa. I don't know what that is. Its official mascot is the hippogriff. Dust is rooted in the Great Tower. Service mounts the Sable Company. And the city's motto is Tosker Exteric, an archaic form of Taladine meaning fidelity and strength. So, taxes suck. They always do. No one really wants to pay them. Kind of need to a lot of times. It's important for the city. There's that kind of give or take about it. But compared to other cities, the government levies relatively few taxes against its citizens in comparison. Interestingly enough. So if you visit Korvosa, you get a docking fee collected by the dock's owners or anyone docking at one of its more private docks. May pay a fee that ranges from 1 silver pieces to 100 gold pieces, depending on the size of the vessel. Around 20% of the fee goes to the Korvosan government. Less is legally pocketed by the dock's owners. Property tax are rather high and based on square footage of the structure's ground floor. An archaic method modifies this based on the rate depending on how many inhabitants the building accommodates, how many floors it has, and whether it's a mixed usage building. Its most recent taxes are the vice taxes, levied on business that conducts illegal, non-violent activities, such as burglary, sale of drugs, etc. By paying this very steep tax, these institutions gain immunity from prosecution or reduction in penalties, and the government gains significant income. Violent criminals are never given this exemption, no matter how high the vice tax they pay. So basically, if you pay the vice tax, even if what you're doing is illegal, you are kind of like not persecuted, or, if really you end up in a situation where you are persecuted, it's like a slap on the wrist. It's like, oh, you paid the vice tax. Well, naughty, don't do this again. But again, like burglary, sale of drugs, a lot of other things, that's in the vice taxes. The Sable Company. Let's talk about them and the military. Let's talk about the military of Korvosa, because there are 3 organizations which represent the military of the city-state, and they're very unique, each of them. So we kind of have to look at each of them separately, because they do make up, technically, the military. First off is, of course, the Korvosan Guard, which is responsible for the protection, well-being of the city. It's the police, and in times of danger, can go beyond the city's walls as a defensive military force. It also oftentimes works towards the interests of the government and local Church of Abaddon. Field Marshal Cressida Croft was the last known one. At the time of the former ruler, during the Crimson Queen timeline, there were about 700 soldiers in the Korvosan Guard. It's another reason why they were overwhelmed. 700 soldiers to 16,500 people in the city. And they were trying to maintain order in the riots. Yeah. They do work closely with both the Order of the Nail and Sable Company, and they are still tied with a lot of Chelaxian traditions when it comes to both military and protection of the city. Then, though, there is the Sable Company. So, they are the Hippogriff-mounted Marines that answer directly to the monarchy. Their orders are given to them by the standing seneschal of Castle Korvosa. They patrol and defend the city's sides and waterways, and they've been known to assist the guards in their efforts throughout the city. Occasionally they do preemptive strikes on the city's foes. They are known to employ spies in key locations throughout a region to to monitor potential enemies such as pirates, smugglers, Shwanti raiders. One infamous failure of this tactic is when the mutilated body of an agent was left in Korvosa's busiest market by a crime lord. So, the current commandant is unknown of the Sable Company. I will let you know that. The previous one was Marcus Thessalinis Endrin. But he passed away, and his replacement is unknown at this time. They're often rangers or paladins / champions who ride hippogriffs, have great skill, and have bonds with their mounts. Aerial dragons. And of course, then the last group that helps protect the city are paid allies of the Korvosan government and pursue the unyielding ideas of order and law from their single Vrade, the Order of the Nail, the group of Hell Knights. They are fanatical when confronted by behavior or events that fly against their worldview, and only support the city as long as they're compensated. So they're basically a mercenary group, but a very orderly mercenary group. It concerns as well with quelling savage practices and bringing civilization to Varisia. So they're one of the original founding Order of Hell Knights, founded in 4683. It was basically coaxed to relocate to Varisia in 4682 by Queen Dominia of Korvosa at the time. The queen before, Arbasti II, who succeeded her. Her son. Erigen Arbasti II. So yeah, she basically was the one that got them to come there. The Hell Knights became indebted to the crown with her generosity and invitation. The government still does have a decades-old grudge against the Order, which is kind of weird, because they pursue their own agenda and their own ideas of laws or justice. But they have helped the city a lot of times, helped with subjugating problems and stuff like that. They are still feared and misunderstood by a lot of the population, the guard, and they're sometimes referred to as Dominus Devils. She made the deal with the devils, and they came in. Well, that's the military forces of Korvosa. So if you're ever worrying about visiting there and dealing with people, that's who we're talking about. Now, let's talk about two major things that we have in the city here: their economy and their religion. They're not necessarily connected. So, it is a major commercial player in Golarion, Korvosa. It's a gateway of trade through Varisia. It exports seafood, oysters from the Narrow of St. Alcar, famous for the oyster beds, reef claws, caviar, high-end seafoods. It also has high-end foodstuffs department. It exports Thelu Park to Cheliax at ridiculously high prices. It exports goods made in its vassal states, and it's the only port that ships off Janderhof goods. It has an impressively large Bank of Abadar, so it's also important to banking and financing in a lot of the region, which mints its own currency. And with the presence of the Academy, it has a fair supply of magical items. It's got a very big magical school here, especially low-level ones utilizing the schools of conjuration. And the Krona family imports a lot of items from distant Vudra, which are also distributed through northern and western Bastion. And as much as the government loathes to admit it, it has a pretty impressive drug trade. Although it mainly imports such goods. Turns out its drug trade is also really good. Its food suppliers come from the farms around it, its vassal communities. It does not import foods it can't grow in its climate. Wine is a major import. They're also it does import foods it can't grow here, so tropical, subtropical fruits are also brought in. The majority of imports, though, are manufactured goods. Despite the presence of the ironworks in the city, which I mentioned, it doesn't have a great capacity to produce finished goods, in comparison to demand for them. So it really has to rely on things like Cheliax for a lot of those. And textiles are an example of stuff that needs to be imported a lot. So, according to the Korvosa Charter, no guilds, trade unions can be formed within the city. The only exception of this is the Cerulean Society, Korvosa's Thieves Guild. And the law was designed to keep groups from price fixing, but also allows the city to maintain direct control over the labor force. Most craftsmen are self-employed and learn to train from a master during their use. It relies on these cottage industries instead of... so certain rights and protections are guaranteed to the workers. So basically, they actually have a relatively large protection and rights for the workers of the city because they rely on self-employed craftsmen who learn their trade from masters or apprentices. And these smaller industries means they have to have those regulations. They don't have guilds to offer protections. They don't want them. They want that control. Now, there is a lot of religion in Korvosa. I was just throwing out here a religious symbol for the entire time of Abadar. So that's one of the major religions here. There are temples to Abadar, Asmodeus, Pharasma, Sarenrae, Shelian, and a lot of other faiths have small shrines throughout the city. Basically, most gods in Inner Sea are openly worshipped. Though, overall, if you look at the population of Korvosa, they're not particularly religious. It's just like, that kind of thing is, in a world where the gods technically exist in some form, you might not be actually religious, but you might, for certain reasons, go to, offer a, coin at certain temples for various reasons. Pharasma definitely one. Abadar, Asmodeus, Pharasma, and Sarenrae are the most popular, though Shellin does have a pretty major temple here. Religions tend to keep to themselves. They cooperate when necessary. If there is differences, they resolve non-violently. Church of Abadar emphasize punishment for criminals. The clerics of Sarenrae have more interest in rehabilitation, so they find some kind of lay ground sometimes. So maybe attempts at rehabilitation first. If they don't work, more punishment. The Church of Abadar, which, again, symbol here, is, the god of cities and the patron of the city's guard, is the most influential. The Bank of Abadar is here in North Point. So, and the main mint of the city. The church's headquarters is... the head of the church is Archbanker Darb Tuttle. And he works with the church works with the authorities to help the city thrive. And most of the city's champions are actually allied with Abadar. The church is supported by the Church of Asmodeus in its attempts to promote law, and asserts the Church of Pharasma in protecting the Grey District from undead. It does work with the Church of Gozera to maintain the calm seas and good weather, and the Church of Aurori to support institutions such as learning in Korvosa, and the Church of Torag in respect to defense and public work. So Abadar, as the main religion, does a really good job of basically kind of keeping everything in check. The Temple Asmodeus has been here since 4608. It is the youngest, and of course, it was to favor the new regime in Cheliax there. The High Priest is Omidar Reeves. It competes with the Church of Abadar for the right to verify and witness oaths and contracts. Its members take pains to operate the right side of the law, and only volunteers are sacrificed to their deity. So if you want to volunteer at the Church of Asmodeus to be sacrificed for your deity, you can. It is seen as a necessary evil if the city ever returns to its prior position as a protector of Cheliax. Basically, the idea is that currently, with everything that happened at Cheliax, they became independent, and currently they are in a position to be independent. But if Cheliax really wanted to, they could make him a protectorate again. So that's why they're like, we'll keep the Church of Asmodeus around, just in case, and, And only the best is good enough for the Temple of Asmodeus, so it causes them to have quite a few dealings with artists and artisans who reveal shilling. Again, we get along. And then we have the Church of Pharasma, the Grand Cathedral in the Great District, which they ensure that none of the undead residents of the graveyard escape into the city. And Bishop Kepper Debar is the head of the Church of the City. And they're aided by, of course, Abadar and Torag. And clerics that are less martial become midwives, which brings them into contact with clergy from Erastil and Sarenrae. The Temple of Asere is the height of the city's highest districts to ensure unobstructed sunlight. It's dedicated to healing. It's popular with the common folk. It serves as a hospital, and the clerics are sought after healers. It's also seen as the best representation and key to Korvosan's virtues of honesty and incorruptibility, and it's basically makes her a very popular faith in the city. Though her clergy work with Erastil and Gozra to keep the weather calm and temperate. Shellin is in the North Point district. It's a small, dedicated temple. It's popular with the artists. I mentioned the Pantheon of Many, which serves 17 gods equally. There are shrines dedicated to deities of their own temples. There are also shrines to the 5 deities mentors: Erastil, Iamade, Torag, Desna, Kaelin, Iori, Gozra, Nethys, Calistre, Zon, Kuthon, Ugothra, Norgaber. All have things there. Grum, Master Rovagog don't have a place in the Pantheon of Many, though they still have worshippers in the city. Eredin was once an important deity. His temple in Old Korvosa has crumbled into ruin. 3 priests remain to serve the temple, and they've been able to gather enough support to block the city's plans to raise the Berlin. Druids aren't popular there, as they're seen as a cabal of troublemakers, as basically due to the behavior of a cabal of troublemaking druids that frequent the West Dock. But they are welcome to visit the Pantheon of Many if they wish. But that is religion within here. Whew. Let's talk about crime! Guess what? There's a lot of crime in Korvosa. This is a long one. So, we have our very nice man here, Bull, who is a crime lord. Not just any crime lord. Guildmaster Bull is head of the Cerulean Society. Remember, that's the Thieves Guild. So, Korvosa is lawfully bent, but it's got a thriving underworld. The city's charter actually allows for a Thieves Guild, and the Cerulean Society is that. It runs a well-organized protection racket. Its blue uniformed employees collect money from the city's nobles, merchants, and Temple of Abadar. Those who refuse to pay are given the society's authorized group of thieves. Basically, like, if you don't pay, your name is spread to the, these thieves that are, like, authorized. And like, oh yeah, you can go take care of them. You can go take stuff from them. There are also a number of, notable gangs that are within the city. The Catstew Lofties are an all-female group of cat burglars who prowl the rooftops of the shingles and prefer to avoid violence. The Dusters are a gang of robbers and kidnappers who take their name for their long overcoats. And the Rat's Teat Boys are a gang that consists entirely of were-rats. Cowhammer Boys had a name that fits a lot with these, but they were really small again. There's also the there's also the Skarzani, who clashed the Cerulean Society in the city streets. Remember the Skarzani, I talked about them in a previous video, are the Varisian crime families that give the Varisian people a bad name, but they're here doing that. They have a particular grudge against House Arcona, but they are too small in numbers to be a powerful force in the city. And they are generally, they generally do have the backing of the Varisia population threat. And there are also a number of minor crime lords. If you watched The Crimson Queen at all, Devargo Barasathi, the King of Spiders, Gadron Lamb, the Orphan Abductor, who, Gadron Lamb's already dead by the time we get to the story currently in Crimson Queen. He dies in like the first couple episodes. He was going to. But, there are a lot of other minor crime lords that find themselves in power in various regions throughout the city. So crime is a big part of the city. So we talked about magic, but we have to talk about both major magical schools and how magic is an important part of here. There's, of course, the Academy and the Themis College, which are both two very powerful schools of magic that are famed in the region. And the amount of magical goods that pour out of these two schools is very important. Of course, the Academy in the Heights District is the bigger of the two. It's a well-known school. The Maxis College in East Shore has its own things. There are many more important magical shops. The Academy, of course, is a wizard's college. Toph Ormelo is the headmaster of it. It attracts students as far away from as Geb. It teaches all 8 modern schools of magic. It specializes in conjuration, though, and requires pupils to pass a difficult exam in order to graduate. So yeah. There's a lot of important information. Imps are very popular, familiar with people because of a lot of reasons. The Reaching Festival is one of their major traditions. Where students have to break into the supposedly impenetrable Hall of Wards. Only one student's managed to do it. In 4551. Which was actually 7 years after the tradition was started, and no one since has been able to do that. So yeah, that's the Academy, and of course the Themis College. It was built on land that once belonged to the noble house of Galdor, which was a disgraced family that lost its property during the Cousins' War. The managed Persians by a retired mage, and in 4603, he made many friends during his time, including the known wizard Tempest Gesbot. And when Thrune rose, the Academy shifted towards those diabolic practices. So basically, imps became super popular in the Academy with House Thrune's rise to power. So he wanted to be kind of more neutral on things. So he was like, it's a tech general wizard school. A lot less conjuration, a lot less devilry. Not as prestigious, but still a pretty big place, and does teach all schools of magic. That's magic in Korvosa. And magic items all over the place. There's a number of large places that sell magic item goods, many of them associated with the Academy. Some that only sell things specifically with the Academy and stuff too. So you can find, because of wizarding schools here, a lot of magical goods that come into the city and are created by, of course, the magical schools and the large number of students they teach. You work on that stuff as part of your learning process. So, yeah, if there's going to be a city that has magic item shop around the corner, Korvosa's it. So, let's talk about who lives in here. That's an Orthiog bursting from the sewer. We're not going to talk about the Orthiogs yet. We're going to talk about the humanoids. So there's a lot of people that live in the city here, to finish out there. A lot of times Korvosa is seen almost as backwater, but it is a lot of cosmopolitan, as there is a lot of beings that live here. There's a lot of people and different creatures. Still, 90% of the population of the city is human. Most being Chelaxian immigrants. Most consider themselves Korvosans, with no strong kinship to their cousins to the south. The other noble ethnic group, of course, is the semi-nomadic Varisians, who constitute about 10% of the population. Though a much higher percentage of the population has some Varisian blood. Pure-blooded Varisians tend to encounter quite a lot of prejudice here. Most just assume them to be murderers and thieves because of, well, the Skarzani. Shuanti is, of course, the ethnic minority. There's centuries of conflict between the Shuanti and the Chelaxian people and the settlers in this region. And a lot of most of the semi-nomadic people have little use for the city. So, like, Varisians can have bias and kind of, like, look down upon. Shuanti can be outright hostile that people feel towards them. Which is an unfortunate thing, because it's sort of like, it's the Chelaxian people moved in and kicked their asses out of this region. And these are the people descended from them, but they don't think about that thing. They just know them as these, like, the people that fought against us and did so much bad stuff, blah, 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 blah. So, it's uneducated masses don't know what they're talking about, but they just have that hostility towards the Shuanti still because it's been a hard thing to heal that kind of thing from those centuries of battle. And yeah, the Varisians don't have it much better because that's also thanks to that Chelaxian blood. Chelaxians are kind of jerks. Anyway, there is the major dwarven settlement of Yanderhof that's nearby, so there is a sizable population of dwarves here. Most are merchants and craftsmen, dealing with the creation of selling tools, arms, and armor. Most of their items are contractually sold out to noble houses, but there are those that sell them to the general population at a profit. They'll often sell surplus on the open market, basically, particularly in the gold market in Midland and dock trade in North Point. Elves have been in Korvosa since early days of founding. They are from the relatively nearby Mirai Forest, though others have made their home here for hundreds of years. The leader of the Mirai Elves is Personnel Karasavo, who is seen as an ambassador of sorts. He maintains a small compound on the South Shore where he and his entourage advise the city's matter on nature, magic, and scholarly topics. Halflings have a history here in Korvosa. The chance to widen the profit margin, House Lorung began constructing halfling-sized ships and boats and hiring halflings to run them, believing that they would take up much less room and eat much less than human counterparts, leaving more room for cargo. Their hunch turned out to be correct. They saw increased profits, and other trade houses, with the exception of House Arcona, soon followed. Today, even though halflings make only about 2% of the population, fully half the ships owned by most of the major merchant houses are staffed by halflings. So they don't have a huge population, but they're pretty big on ships, and so halflings have found a pretty good part here in Korvosa and seen, a popularity amongst trade houses because, yeah, not for good reasons, but it's been good for them. There are other beings which live here, speaking of the Othiok, but we'll just see this nice thing of house drakes and imps battling to the death in the sky, because we can talk about house drakes, imps, and Othioks. So imps are common. They fight their natural enemy, the local pseudo-dragons / house drakes, as they're called. They're oftentimes summoned by the Academy as part of graduation requirements, and plenty are unable to bind them or control them, so a lot of them escape into the city and form small packs looking for mischiefs. And they are a particular nuisance in the shingles, and oftentimes form alliances with gangs or other ne'er-do-wells. Their other side is the pseudo-dragons, / house drakes as they're known. They've lived in this area of the Korvosa before there was a city, and for whatever reason, unknown to anybody, they're the mortal enemies of the imp population. So they fight when they encounter each other. But about 2 or 3 times a year, the thing that the picture I'm showing here happens, where imps and pseudo-dragons gather in huge flocks and fight each other in mass above the city. I had one of those battles occur during the riots because they were set off. Othioks, the big bursting from the sewers? Yeah, that happens because about 2 centuries ago, Magistrate Des Lalong imported a small population from Cheliax and basically imprisoned them in the sewers beneath Endron Island, basically getting control over the waste populations. Access to the tunnels they inhabit is via street-level entrances sealed with massive steel plugs that can only be opened by even larger crank winches. They occasionally escape from these pens and break into the main sewers, or even make way to the city streets, causing damage. But yes, basically, they were thrown into the sewers to do their thing. And those are the less human creatures that inhabit, Korvosa. And Korvosa, just to finish up today, does have some slang developed out of Kaldane, like Chel, Fronter, Horser, which, might not always be the best words. Chel is derogatory for Chelaxian, Dancer is a pickpocket or thief, and Horser is an offensive term for Shuanti. So there's a lot of these words that go around, slang terms, and plenty of them are really not great. So, if you want to learn some of it, like Imper is a term for the young students who study magic at the Academy, because you're kind of summoning them. There is an entire section on Korvosan slang you can look up, and it is in the Guide to Korvosa. A little bit of the House of Books shows it off. So you can learn those words there if you want to know some of the slang. Again, some of it's derogatory. Plenty of it's derogatory. People aren't really that nice. But that is, of course, Korvosa. A major city-state. A region with a deep history, and honestly, a major adventure path that takes place in it, and a lot of information that's provided because it is such a city that has been used in a bunch of places. It's been visited in adventure paths, and we know a lot about it. We can talk a lot about it. We have its rules. I think that's one of those things that I do like when we have adventures and adventure paths set in an area. We learn more about it, and we've learned a lot about Korvosa. It's a city that is kind of in a weird place, because it's a little bit of that old world and a little bit of the new world of Varisia, but it hasn't quite shaken off the old world of Cheliax. While Magnamar has kind of evolved beyond where its connections with Cheliax and its settlements as a colony have been, Korvosa is a little bit more slower to change. Magnamar has been seen to be expanding, building itself more into a country quite rapidly. Korvosa is kind of heading in that direction, but at a much slower rate and probably not nearly as controlled as any of the others. Its own misgivings, connections with the past, inability to evolve itself beyond where it was, and a lot of the things they put in place with it. Being an old city with an old city soul, almost. And the blood that it was built upon means that it has to escape from many problems before it can grow and gain the strength that might move it to be something major. The founding of a country is a difficult thing. Korvosa's on that path. And certainly it has the economic power that, yes, Magnamar is beginning to compete with, but it still has that economic power and strength that is very unique to itself. Korvosa is interesting. There are so many stories to tell about it. And, I hope you can continue to join us in the future when I do more, Crimson Queen. Either if you're watching this when Crimson Queen is done, go back and check it out. Or if you're watching it during any time that's coming on, go start from the beginning. Check it out. Learn about Korvosa. You'll experience the city a little bit through the eyes of our players. And what happens there. And the stories that unfold there. It is a powerful city-state. And, could prove itself, honestly, a powerful nation in the future. Its position, its trade, could make it rival many other countries in the future. Maybe. That possibility exists. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today. Remember, I said at the beginning to check out things, to, check out the YouTube side of things if you're here on Twitch. Give the various support tiers like subs and likes and stuff there. You're joining me on YouTube side. Go check me out live on Twitch. Hey, give me that follow. I got social media, Discord, Twitter.com. Check those out. If you're looking for when you can see all this stuff, then join me. I mean, you never know how your game is going to end up. Your story will end up different than the official one. Probably. I'm going to keep the official one in mind, but your actions could differ sometimes. Just like sausage actions. What was I saying? Yeah, if you want to see the tabletop stuff live, it's Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. Tuesdays, Thursdays, usually between 1 or 2, given how we're going to that. Sometimes earlier, sometimes later. Thursdays tends to be the Pathfinder day. Tuesdays, the random day. And Saturdays around 11 o'clock, that's my World of Darkness day. That's pretty exact about that time when it started there. Check that out. And again, this stuff does go up on YouTube later on, but that's when you can check me out live. Other stuff, of course, Crimson Queen, I kept mentioning. Around the Korvosa. Yeah, I'm going to keep mentioning it. It's related to that. It's on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. in the evening, EST. So check that out. All my times are EST. And then Saturday, discussing tabletop at 6 p.m. EST. That discussion show where I talk about news of the week and more with my friends. Deeper discussions. And if you want to see some random gaming, talking around, chatting, that's Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays on the Twitch show. If you want to check that out. Less tabletop stuff. That doesn't go up on YouTube. But, yeah. Alright, that's my shout-outs. I hope you're having a great rest of your day. Enjoy your time. Hope that everything's going well. And, it's been a good year for you. And till the next time that we chat about somewhere else in the world of Golarion, visit more of Pathfinder, or any other role-playing game out there. I bid all of you out there a wonderful and deep farewell.